I've been doing drug training for a long time. Even before I retired from law enforcement, I was doing drug trainings. Kind of explain what would happen. I was in our drug unit supervising, and quite a few times we get calls from the general public. Maybe it's a school district would call, or a PTA, or a parent group, or church group would call and say, hey, next Wednesday at 7 o'clock in our high school auditorium, we're going to have a bunch of parents come in, and can one of your guys talk about drugs for an hour or two? So we're always getting these type of requests. Well, now me being a supervisor, I'm not really doing undercover work like I was before. No reason to really protect my identity like some of these undercover drug guys. So a lot of times I would do these type of trainings. So I would go to the high school auditorium. There'd be a bunch of parents in the room, and we would talk for an hour or two about drugs. And then what would happen a lot of times? Well, several of the parents would want to come up afterwards and talk. One of the things I heard over and over again was, hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate what you did, but you just scared me to death. How do I know if my kid's on drugs? So over the years, we kind of thought, you know what, let's try and make this as easy as we can for parents. So we came up with the ABCs of drug recognition. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I know this is mostly about kids, but this could be anyone in our lives that's struggling with drugs. If we have a loved one, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a niece or a nephew, and they start down that path of drugs, and that path becomes or leads to a physical dependency or an addiction, and there are differences to both, we will see changes in their ABCs. So this is what we're going to talk about today, and that is the ABCs of drug recognition. You're going to see changes in their appearance, behavior, and conduct. Now keep this in mind as well. Not one sign proves anything. Some of this stuff, I'm sure you parents are going to watch and say, well, this is just a normal part of growing up. As our sons or daughters start to mature and things happen in their lives, they're going to display some of these things. And that's true. But what we're talking about here is long-term patterns. And also keep this in mind. It may be just not growing up, but it might be something else going on in the world. Not only drug use can start at a very young age, and oftentimes does start during our teen years, but a lot of our mental health conditions also start at younger ages. And it can be confusing sometimes. What is a sign of drug use versus a sign of a mental health condition? Because they're oftentimes very similar and they can overlap. So it could be an issue going on like maybe depression in our child's life or anxiety. Maybe it's another medical condition or a sleep disorder or bullying going on at school, boyfriend and girlfriend issues, all those type of things. What matters is a cluster of changes. And this is measured against that person's norm. So what we're looking at here, guys, is things that's out of the norm. And again, we're talking about things that last for weeks rather than days. Treat these things as a reason to ask a question. So when we do ask a question of our child, hey, what's going on? You just don't seem yourself lately. You've been sleeping a lot during the day, and it seems like you're staying up late at night, and I'm just worried about you. Are you sick? Do you have some sort of issue where we maybe need to see the doctor? That would be a much better way to start the conversation and let them know what you're seeing versus, hey, you're sleeping during the day a lot and kind of nodding off and on. I was going through this training, learning about drugs, and I think maybe you might be using pain pills or heroin. Probably not a good idea to start with an accusation. Ask a question because this could lead to the important conversations. All right, so let's go over these specifically. What is the A? What is appearance? It's what you can see out of this person. These are important indicators. So let's go over a few. One of the big ones we always talk about is the eyes, and the eyes don't lie. Our eyes can be very susceptible to certain drugs. Let's think about alcohol. What can alcohol do to the eyes? Well, it can cause bloodshot, glassy, watery eyes. Smoking a drug could cause the same thing, specifically THC in marijuana. Delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol, there's other deltas, delta 8, delta 10, and so forth. When we smoke THC, What happens is it causes the blood vessels in our bodies to dilate, including the capillaries in our eyes. So if the capillaries expand too much, they can burst. Then we have the red eye, the bloodshot eyes, and those type of things. So also what marijuana can do is change the size of the pupil, just like other drugs. So let's get into some of that. If we have drugs that are very small, that can be indicative of a certain classification of drugs versus pupils that are very large can be tied to certain classifications of drugs. And when we get to the end of today's program, we're going to talk about specifically about the eyes. I'm going to show you some pictures of what I'm talking about there. Other things we might see. Could see a sudden weight loss, or it could be a weight gain. Again, we're looking for things out of the norm. So if my drug of choice is methamphetamine, which is a very powerful appetite suppressant, I may lose a lot of weight very quickly. But if my drug of choice is alcohol and I come home from work and I'm drinking a case of beer every night with a lot of calories, that may or may not cause me to lose weight. I could actually potentially gain weight. So we're talking about those changes, guys. And it's a change over time. But what we oftentimes see is grooming and hygiene issues where it just seems like they're disheveled. They're not keeping themselves neat like they used to. Maybe their clothing has changed. They're just not taking care of themselves like we once knew they did. And then it smells. Remember to use all of your senses here, guys. And one of the big smells, one of the big senses is the sense of smell. Now, not all drugs you're going to have a smell, but there are some, like alcohol. We probably all know what alcohol smells like. Marijuana, at least the traditional form that we would smoke in a blunt or a joint or a bong, one of those type of things, you might get a traditional odor of marijuana. If we're huffing chemicals, which is oftentimes a very cheap high for kids, where we're putting gasoline or we're putting dust off or nitrous oxide, we're doing whippets or laughing gas, those type of things. Some of those chemicals we may soak in a rag and take into our body. They can have chemical odors, paints, those type of things. So if we're huffing those type of chemicals, we're going to have a chemical odor about our body. Now, also think when you think of smell about the person, don't just think that the smell might be tied to a particular drug. It also could be tied to covering up the odor we don't want someone to smell. And give you an example here. Let's say that we have a 16, 17-year-old son, and our son knows his curfew's 11 o'clock. So it's Friday night. Our son wants to go out to a party or go to a movie with his buddies or the school dance or the Friday night football game. And our son says, "Hey, mom and dad, I'm going out. I know my curfew's 11. I'll be home a little bit before 11. All right, son, have a good time. Call us if you need anything." So a couple minutes till 11, maybe myself and spouse we're in the back of the house in the family room watching TV, really just trying to stay awake till our son comes home so we know he's safe. So a couple minutes till 11 o'clock, what do we hear? We hear the doorknob kind of rattle there, and in comes our son. Son shuts the door, sees a light on in the family room, and says, "Hey, mom and dad, I'm home. I'm safe. Just want to let you know, boy, I'm tired. I'm going to go upstairs to bed." What's mom and dad do? "Oh, no, son, come on in here in the living room or the family room. We want to kind of find out how your night was." Now, does mom and dad really want to know how their night was? Probably not. What's mom and dad want to know? Has my son been drinking or using any drugs or smoking marijuana, those type of things? So what happens? Son comes into the family room. What's mom do? She gets up, gives the son a big hug. And as she's giving her son a big hug, "I'm glad you're home safe," she's sniffing him. Well, the son knows that mom's a sniffer, so what's he do? Well, he covers up potential odors. So maybe your son comes into the room and he's got a strong odor of cologne, or maybe your daughter comes in the room with a strong odor of perfume. When do we normally put perfume and cologne on? When we're going out, not when we're coming home. When we start to notice those strange odors, why? We had a parent, I was doing a presentation at a high school, and I had some parents talk to me about a story how they caught their son smoking marijuana. He was coming home from a party, and he came home, mom sniffing her son or whatever dad is, and they got a strong odor of gasoline. And they're like, son, what happened? Why do you smell like gas? Oh, mom, I was pumping some gas in the car before I came home and spilled some gas on me, those type of things. Well, it kept occurring where they would get that gas odor. How many times do you spill gas? So come to find out what the boy was doing is purposely putting gas on a rag and dabbing it on his outer clothing so the gasoline smell would overpower the marijuana smell. So we got to think about those little things. If they smell a certain way, why? Why do they smell that way? Now, we talk about the eyes, bloodshot, glassy, watery eyes. Well, one of the ways to potentially combat that is eye drops. Could be Visine, Bausch and Lomb, Roto products like the one I'm holding up here in my hand. If you start to see these type of containers on a regular basis, or you start to see them use eye drops on a regular basis, and they don't have any type of condition where they would need these type of eye drops, those are questions to ask. Again, we had a couple come to one of our presentations, and they said, I couldn't understand why I opened my kid's glove box to his car, and there were 5 containers of Visine eye drops. 4 were empty and 1 was half full. Why do you need all the eye drops? It wasn't clicking to them. So those are some things that sound obvious, but they may not be to some people. And then putting something in our mouth, gum or mint, to cover up the odor of alcohol or the smell of tobacco products or marijuana, those type of things. So appearance, what you can see, very, very important. Now let's get into the behaviors of the ABCs. How are they acting? Huge swings in the mood. A lot of times we might see this with someone that's using opioids. Opioids could be pain pills. Maybe I'm experimenting with Percocets or Vicodin or one of those type of opioid pain medications. And maybe it's heroin or fentanyl. Those are all opioids. And if you've ever been around somebody like I have that's been addicted to opioids, boy, when they can't get that drug, they go into serious withdrawal. I mean, described as 10 times worse than the worst case of flu. They call it being dope sick. You guys have all heard that term, being dope sick. You will see those huge swings in the mood. So imagine me. Maybe I'm going to work, and every morning I have an issue with, let's say, opioids. So every morning before I go to work, I'm stopping by my fentanyl dealer's house, and I'm picking up a little package of fentanyl to put it in my body. Well, this morning I go over to the dealer's house. He doesn't have anything for me. Now I'm freaking out, aren't I? So what am I doing? I'm calling a couple of my other dealers. Nobody's got anything. And I'm thinking, man, there is no way that I can go to work dope sick, but I got to be at work. The boss has warned me several times. You can't be late again. You can't call off sick again or we're going to fire you. So I struggle my way into work. Boy, you're going to tell at work that I'm not feeling good, that I could be potentially withdrawing from those drugs. Now, what happens at 11 o'clock? Right before my lunch break, dealer texts me, hey, I got your package, Shawn. Come meet me at the McDonald's. So I said, okay, boss, I'm going to take my lunch break, go to McDonald's, meet him in the parking lot, do the exchange, go in that McDonald's bathroom, lock the door, and put that drug into my body. Whew, now I can get through the day. When I come back to work, is my mood going to be different? Absolutely. And that's just one of several different kind of scenarios that could cause those huge swings in the mood back and forth between the day and the night, those type of things. Could be very irritable or agitated when I'm withdrawing from a drug. Those are important indicators as well. Guys, you will see changes in everything. When a person's drug use becomes a physical dependency or addiction, their life's going to be in chaos. I mean, from their family life to their social life to their spiritual life to their work life. You're going to see changes and patterns in just about everything. And one of those could be sleep, where maybe I'm sleeping during the day or nodding off during the day and staying awake later at night. Or maybe I couldn't sleep all night because I'm worried that my dealer's not going to hook me up in the morning. And then what? Then I fallen asleep or nodding out at work. Opioids can also cause the nods, those type of things. But it's differences in our sleep patterns. Those are the important things to think about. The speech. Drugs and alcohol disrupt the circuitry of the brain. So our brain doesn't communicate like it normally would. One of the things that can be affected by this disruption is speech. You think alcohol. Commonly, you think with alcohol, slurred speech, thick tongue speech, mush mouth speech. You think opioids, it could be something that's kind of slowed and delayed speech. Why is Shawn talking like that? Or maybe it's the reverse, where I come to work or I'm coming to home from the party and I'm talking a mile a minute bouncing off the walls. Very fast speech or repetitive speech. Because of that disruption in my brain, I forget what I'm talking about and I can't carry on two sentences of a conversation without repeating myself. Those are all things just to think about there, guys. Now, coordination issues, very common. Alcohol and other drugs can cause motor skill issues where maybe I'm tripping, I'm falling, I'm wobbly, I'm very unsteady in my feet. I'm steadying myself or supporting myself by holding my hand on something, or I'm going to fall down, those type of things. Those are big indicators as well. Being very secretive, very secretive of who I'm going out with, where I'm going, very secretive with my phone, where I don't want mom and dad to see my phone anymore. Maybe mom takes my phone one day and she's going through my apps, and all of a sudden she sees a calculator app. She swipes another calculator. Shawn, why do you have 3 calculator apps? And then what happens? Mom clicks on one of the calculator apps and it's password protected. Shawn, why do you have your calculator password protected? That's because, Mom, it's not really a calculator. It is maybe a disguised app that's hiding my WhatsApp, where it's text messages that mom and dad can't see. So being very secretive or protective of things, could be a big sign, guys. Another one that's really, really big: dropping out of lifelong childhood dreams and reconnecting with very negative things. Maybe your son loves to play football, or your daughter loves to play basketball, or she's in the band. They just start their freshman year in high school. All of a sudden, your son comes home and says, "Hey, Mom, hey, Dad, I don't think I want to play football anymore." What? Why? What's going on? You've been playing since Pee Wee League. Nope, Dad, Mom, just don't interest me anymore. When they start dropping out of lifelong loves, boy, that's a big, big indicator. Lying and stealing. Lying and stealing from not only mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, some of the most vulnerable people in their worlds. That kid knows if they give those puppy dog eyes to grandma and grandpa, they'll give them about anything they want. Guys, kids who have drug addiction issues, who are actively using those drugs, are no different than us as adults. They become masters of deception and masters of manipulation. Please don't forget that. I've had my own family members that struggle with drugs and alcohol come up to me and say, "Shawn, when I'm on the drug, if my lips are moving, I'm probably lying to you. Don't believe a word I say when I'm on the drug." So those are some common behavior indicators. And obviously, these lists are not all inclusive by any stretch. And then the C is our conduct, that pattern. And remember, that pattern over time, maybe weeks instead of days. Performance issues. Your kid comes home freshman year, high school, got his first report card. Until high school, his whole scholastic career, straight A student. All of a sudden, you get that first report card, it's all C's and D's. Wouldn't that be something you and your spouse are going to sit that child down and say, "What the heck is going on with your grades?" Performance issues is a big one, guys. It's no different at work. Let's say we're coworkers and we're working together. We're kind of partners at work and we have the same work ethic and the same speed of work, quality of work. We're just humming along. Then all of a sudden, boss comes up to you one day and says, "Hey, I got to let you know, Shawn is going to be late for work today." What? Shawn's never late for work. Then all of a sudden, a couple of days later, "Hey, I hate to tell you this, but Shawn called off on us at the last minute." What? Shawn never misses work. And when I am at work, what's happening now? My work's very shoddy. I'm not keeping up. You're having to redo my work for me because how bad my work is. Guys, those are big indicators. Money issues. There's one thing you got to think about when we start down that path of drugs towards addiction. Tolerance will generally build in my body. Generally, no matter what drug it is. So what is tolerance? Tolerance is where my body gets used to that drug. So if my body gets used to that amount I'm using and my body no longer feels those effects that I'm desiring from the drug, what am I thinking? Well, I got to do more. So as I'm doing more and more drugs, more and more alcohol, that's going to cost more and more money. So you start to notice the money issues where maybe they're borrowing money off their buddies, or you got a coworker borrowing monies off of other people at work, or you start to see theft and those type of things. Where we're, hey, I don't know what happened, but somebody stole my Apple Watch, Mom. I don't know what happened to it. And then all of a sudden it shows up at the pawn shop, those type of things, guys. When you start to notice money or valuables missing, those are important indicators. In that group of friends, maybe your son or daughter, their whole childhood had this core group of friends and they always hang out together. Now, all of a sudden, their freshman, sophomore year in high school, they got a whole new group of friends. They don't hang out with those old kids anymore. They're always hanging over at the cool parents' house. They're not, when they are home, they're isolated in the bedroom away from mom and dad. You start to see that isolation from the family, that kind of I don't really care attitude anymore. Boy, those are some big, big indicators, guys. We start, like I said, at work, that work scenario, we start skipping school. Dad, I'm not feeling good this morning. I can't go to school. You start showing up late at night when your curfew's 11 o'clock, son. Now all of a sudden, he's always been good about that. Now all of a sudden, he starts to push it a little bit. 11:10, he shows up. 11:20, he shows. So start missing curfew times and those type of things. Getting in trouble. Son or daughter, never been in trouble at school, always done what we asked them to do at school, and what all of a sudden is happening. We're starting to get calls. Your son's disruptive, your son's getting in arguments, or your daughter's getting in fights with people. Same thing at work. I've seemed to be a pretty laid back guy at work, and now all of a sudden I'm picking fights with everybody at work, and no longer getting along with the bosses and those type of things. Or now all of a sudden you get the knock at the door, and there's the cops showing up with your daughter or your son. Hey, this is what happened. They start getting in trouble at school, work, and with the police. Those are big indicators as well. All right, so let's talk specifically about the eyes here and how they are so susceptible to some drugs. Now, constricted pupils there on the left, very, very tiny pupils. If you see that, that is generally consistent with narcotic analgesics or opioids. Heroin, fentanyl, oxycodone, which is Oxycontin or Percocets, some of those type of drugs, codeine, hydrocodone like Vicodin or Norco. And remember, guys, when we are on those type of opioids, our pupils are not sensitive to light. So I remember, 25 years ago, teaching parents right when we started to see a lot of kids using the pain pills, and we started the pain pill epidemic. Hopefully you guys don't remember that, but that's what happened 25 years ago or so. Parents would want to ask, well, other than a drug test, is there any way I can know if my kid might be experimenting with Percocets or Oxycontin? And what we would oftentimes advise them to do, look, take them in the room, in the house, shut all the lights off. Now imagine we're all in a room together in the house, and it's dark outside, turn all the lights off, can't see anything. What will all of our pupils do? They'll dilate. They're searching for light. And then what do? Well, take a little pen light or maybe your little flashlight app on your phone and work that pupil back and forth. As that direct pinpoint light comes in contact with the pupil, what will the pupil do? It will shrink. But as it moves away from the pupil will dilate. But if they're on an opioid, there'll be no dilation. They will remain at that pinpoint constriction no matter how you move that light to or from. That is a big clue there, guys. Now, the one in the middle, we talked about this, how marijuana can cause the red eye. Alcohol can cause the red eye. Some sedatives or benzodiazepines, those anti-anxiety medications like Valium and Xanax. Dissociative anesthetics, PCP, ketamine. And we have some new dissociative anesthetics, guys, that are hitting our drug supply can be very similar to ketamine, like xylazine and nitazines and medetomidine and some of those. So those are being mixed with our fentanyl analogs and other drugs as well. Inhalants, we talked about maybe we're sniffing gas or doing nitrous oxide. Those can cause that bloodshot eyes, those red eyes. And then you look on the right to dilated pupils, where the pupils get huge. Generally, when we think dilated pupils, most of us think stimulant drugs, CNS stimulants, central nervous system stimulants, like cocaine, methamphetamine. It could be ADHD medications like Adderall or Focalin or Vyvanse or one of those type of drugs. Also, some hallucinogens can cause dilated pupils. LSD, magic mushrooms, that's psilocybin's the active ingredient. Marijuana. So when you think about marijuana, guys, it could do two things to the eyes. It can cause the bloodshot, glassy, watery eyes, and it can dilate the pupils. Generally, you only see that with stimulants. Marijuana is not classified as a stimulant, it's classified as a hallucinogen, but it can cause dilation. Now, notice there on the right when it also says opioid withdrawal. This can be confusing. You see, when I'm on an opioid, we talked about those, prescription opioid like Percocet, heroin, fentanyl, the opposite effect happens when we're on the drug versus when we're withdrawing from the drug. Give you an example. A lot of times, one of the side effects from opioids, if you've ever been prescribed one, Vicodin or whatever, a lot of us experience constipation where we can't go to the bathroom. Well, when we're withdrawing from that opioid, what happens? What's a reverse of constipation? Diarrhea. So that's the reverse happening. So that's what's happening here. When we're on the opioid, pinpoint constriction, but we're withdrawing from the opioid, that's when you could have the dilation. Now, you got to think of something here as well. The world's not the same as it was with drugs as it was 40, 50 years ago. If you had the heroin user of the 1970s, they liked to use heroin. They stayed in their lane. Maybe I was using crack cocaine in the 1980s, that stimulant drug. I stayed in my lane. It's just not like that anymore, guys. All of those lines are blurred. So I go to my drug dealer this morning and I'm asking for fentanyl. He's like, I ain't got no fentanyl, dude, but I got some meth. Well, methamphetamine does the opposite of what fentanyl does. I don't care. I want to escape reality. I'll take your meth to get me through the day. And you also have to think about this. I'm buying pills. Maybe I'm buying what I think is a Xanax. Well, Xanax will have a certain, I'll feel a certain way I'm on the Xanax. But that Xanax pill might not be a Xanax at all. Maybe it's pressed fentanyl or it's pressed methamphetamine, or maybe it has several different drugs in the same little pill. So if I'm taking an opioid and a stimulant at the same time, what's stronger and what's going to affect my pupils? So there are lines that are blurred with this. I'm just giving you historic generalizations when we talk about how our eyes are susceptible to drugs. Okay? All right. So thank you guys so much for watching. What we're going to do on our next series presentation is when we talk about the ABCs, appearance, behavior, and conduct, this can oftentimes be tied to what I call the 3 C's. And the 3 C's are items used to carry, conceal, and consume a drug paraphernalia. So the next time we're going to talk about how to conceal or cover up the use of drugs when it comes to different items. Thanks for watching.